basic understanding of what yin is, because like we all know, like what you just said, like it's where you come to meditate or a relaxation state. But what is it?
Well, yin we hold for longer periods of time. So it's different from like our vinyasa styles. So all yoga is basically called hatha. So it's probably a bit closer to hatha, but then it's even more subtle again than hatha. And so we've given it the term yin just to differentiate it from those more sort of moving styles, more flowing styles, more athletic styles. And yin is about holding the pose for longer periods of time. So we're going to hold the pose for at least 2 minutes, anywhere up to 5-10 minutes, depending on your body, depending on the location, and depending on your mindset, like how still and how present you can actually get as well. But we're focusing on a different aspect of the body when we're doing yin. We're trying to stretch out the connective tissue. And so the connective tissue's got quite a large term, and you quite often hear people call it fascia. And fascia, from a Gray's Anatomy textbook point of view, is more like the superficial fascia, just directly underneath the skin. But realistically, it's kind of a greater term than that. So it's the superficial fascia, it's the deep fascia, it's the meningeal layers, and it's the visceral layers, so around the nerves and around the organs as well. But then it also includes the tendons, the ligaments, cartilage. Some definitions include like the bursa as well. And then it also includes potentially the bones, which is interesting because when you're first born, you're born with over 300 bones, and then slowly they merge and come to about 200 and something bones. And so it's not like you lose bones, but they grow together and start to fuse together. And so in that state, they're a little bit more like cartilage. And we all know that with like the top of a baby's head, like not to touch it because it's still really soft, and then eventually it does solidify. But there's lots of other bones in our body that are like that as well. And so it feels more like what our nose feels like, quite squishy, like more cartilagey. And then eventually they start to solidify and become super hard. So, you know, you've seen some of like ancient practices where they do like head wrapping with bandages to try and elongate the skull, or they wrap up feet to try and stop the feet from growing. And it's not like bones are bones, they're just strong, but it's like because they're more soft, they're more malleable at a younger age as well. So that will influence what your body is like as you get older, as you're growing, how you're using your body, how you're stressing your body in different ways, and your bones will adapt to that. So in that way, we see the bones potentially, but definitely the periosteum, the layer that goes around the bone, as part of that as well. But the thing is, for us to access this, again, it takes a couple of minutes. And they say it's a couple of minutes for, I think it's called the Golgi tendon to activate, and then to send a signal to the myofibroblasts. And these are these little cells that are on the connective tissue. And then they're going to inspire change. So they're remodeling the connective tissue, which is very different to like when you go to the gym and you're working out and you're trying to tear and rip your muscle just a little bit. So then that feeling of DOMS then is the feeling of like a swollen and sort of torn muscle, but then it's repairing almost instantly, and it's growing and getting bigger as a consequence. Whereas connective tissue, we're not trying to tear it, we're trying to inspire change. So then realistically, like if we're all sitting slumped over a desk all day, like typing away, which we probably all do, then that's going to affect our posture in the long term. And it's great that we're doing like, an hour of yin a day, but if you're spending 8 hours slumped over the desk like this, then that's going to, all those little Golgi tendons are going to be like, okay, well, you want to keep your body in this way, tells the myofibroblast, please go and remodel this fascial connective tissue to help to support this shape. And so then that's what happens. And so it's more of the amount of time we're spending in the pose, and then much, much, much less about the level of sensation. So we want to have the point of first sensation, we say, but then that's about it. And then after that, you just relax and just enjoy where you are. And that's the beauty of it becoming more meditative, because we're not fighting to be there. It's not like we're sweating and straining or holding on to it. It's just like we're just relaxing and just getting present then. So then it becomes more of a mindfulness practice then.
And when you say that, you mean like with a stretch, you go into the stretch, go as far as you can, but back it off a little bit so that therefore the muscles don't contract. That's what you mean. Is that right?
Pretty much. It's a tricky one to explain to students. I'll usually say 100% of your range is the point just before pain. And so once you get to that point, you've gone beyond your range, and now you're probably going to be damaging yourself. well, not in the short term, but in the long term, if you're holding for like 3 minutes at that intensity, potentially you could get little tears in the connective tissue, 8 to 12 weeks, because that you're out trying to repair that, just because there's less blood flow into that area. And so, yeah, you want to be spending a little bit more time. Sorry, I forgot what was the question again? I sort of talked myself
Like,
around in the corner.
I was just saying, like, for like thinking about when you go into a stretch, how far do you go? Like, how do you know?
Yeah. So the point just before pain. Thanks, I'm back on track now. The point just before pain, generally I would say, is about 100%. So it's a little bit too far. So we always want to back it off. We say to about 60%, but that number, like 160%, is pretty arbitrary, and it's hard to really explain to people. Generally, I'll say the point of first sensation. So pretty much what you said was a fair statement. Like going to that point where it's like you can feel it strong, and then just kind of like backing off. So where it is that place, I generally say, where your breath is relaxed. And because your breath is this connection between your body and your mind, because the breath doesn't need us to get involved most of the time. The breath is free to just look after us and to breathe the way it needs to. You know, if you start exerting yourself, it'll get faster. When you're more relaxed, you're sleeping, it slows down. But then you'll notice throughout the day that you'll like hold your breath, or your breath will get shorter, or you won't be exhaling fully. And usually that's because the mind is then starting to hijack the physiological process. And so it's one of the ways to really know, like if you're in the pose and you're super relaxed, is your breath relaxed? Is it deep? Is it flowing? Is it free? And if it is, you're doing the right thing.